Hello, my name is Olu Osha, and I talk about American presidents. I'm continuing with my discussion on Bill Clinton's Welfare Reform Act of 1996 and how it combined with his crime bill of 1994, leading to adverse impact and consequences for the black and brown communities. So I had talked about the draconian implementation of the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act of 1996, how it criminalized uh, non-custodial uh, fathers who were delinquent uh, on child support payments, and it implemented a national database uh, which tracked all new hires and was able to garnish wages. It was also able to, it led to draconian child support enforcement, which just ended up causing more trauma for the children. Um, it also had, it terminated benefits for uh, welfare recipients who uh, were convicted of, drug possession. So you see people who were already hard up, poor people who have children and now at risk. They're at risk children to support. They're left to their devices. It exacerbated homelessness, and this ultimately leads to crime. It just leads to high incidence of crime. And so, with the withdrawal of benefits, it leads to institutionalization. Either mothers and fathers are incarcerated. If they're not incarcerated, uh, they can be incarcerated for loitering or trespassing, since these are actually offenses of lifestyle offenses, because in many states, many counties, if they don't have living assistance, they're not able to pay their rent. They could be arrested for trespassing and loitering. They're homeless, and so uh, it could lead to other crimes. People who don't have jobs, they can't support their families. It might lead them to crime. Selling drugs or prostitution. So you find that this is something, I don't know if they've tracked this. Recidivation. Recidivation is different from recidivism. I don't know if this has been tracked. The rates at which poor people, due to the loss of welfare benefits and state assistance, how they move into crime. And so poverty was essentially criminalized, uh, due to the draconian implementation of the temporary assistance for needy families. Um, you know, and even though there was a requirement, the 30-hour per week work requirement, and the idea was to get people off dependence, because it was stigmatizing dependence and making it look like, well, these people are just irresponsible, they're just bad people. The reality about life is people find themselves in situations sometimes, and uh, sometimes people make bad decisions, but you shouldn't get a life sentence from a bad decision. Where is a society that's more that has empathy and compassion? Uh, Part of the hallmark, a hallmark of a civilized, advanced nation is that it should have more compassionate, and it should have more safety nets for its citizens. We find that we now have we have a society, a country with policies criminalizing poverty, poor people. Uh, Meanwhile, it's a nation that has the most powerful, largest military in the world. A lot of people who are in the military come from uh, low income, in fact, poor families. So do we send our poor youth into the military to become cannon fodder, just because they're disposable? Or is it that we send them off into our military because, uh, you know, we believe they have a stake in the nation? They have a real stake in the nation, and it's a nation that does benefit them, not just the rich. So there's a cycle of poverty that, Bill Clinton's Welfare Reform Act, uh, uh, it launches already poor people into recidivation and a continuous cycle of poverty and crime. So adding the the crime bill, the the draconian nature of the crime bill as well. Um, Remember, the crime bill was that's the Violence, Crime Control, and Law Enforcement Act of 1994. Among the features was it implemented uh, federal death penalty for many crimes, many new offenses. It had the three strikes and you're out feature, which meant that people convicted of violent crimes or felonies three times would get life sentences, right? And of course, it funded uh, more prisons. It funded more prisons. It induced states who received grants to build prisons to uh, enforce the truth in sentencing laws, which required convicts to serve at least 85% of their sentences. And so you see, this it exacerbated incarceration rates for Black and brown communities. And again, America is like a uh, a prison state, because we have uh, the highest number of incarcerated people in the world, over 2.3 million people, and again, and a disproportionate amount of them are Black and brown people. In fact, the state of Maryland that I'm living in right now, has the highest incarceration rates in America. Over 70% for Black people, the highest incarceration rate of Black people in America. So we find that, unfortunately, Bill Clinton, a Democrat, Democrats were supposed to be, uh, you know, uh, our representatives who advance social justice and civil rights, especially for minorities, since the 60s, since the time of JFK and LBJ. But uh, Bill Clinton's reforms did not reflect this. It didn't reflect the empathy the Democratic Party had taken on since the 60s. It was very draconian. It was very uh, adversarial and punitive for Black and brown communities. Um, so uh, it wasn't, the crime bill combined with uh, welfare reform Bill Clinton, our 42nd president, just led to the devastation of black families. The welfare reform bill was, as I said earlier, it was also it had its religious features, right? A moralistic feature. It was supposed to sort of induce or induce or lure single mothers to go into heteronormative marriages, but that was not the case. America just has a general problem uh, with divorce, right, and dysfunction, right? America has 67% divorce rate. So the thing is, humans have relationships. We get into relationships. It's normal. And if children come out of these relationships, it's very important that these children have the safety, the care they need to be able to grow up and be, productive members of society. Instead of looking to punish the parents, right? You punish the parent when society punishes the parents for choices that they made as human beings, right? We're human beings, and especially young people. It's a free society where liberty, we that liberty has a premium, and when children come out of these relationships, it doesn't matter how much we try to prevent it and how much we 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 harp on individual responsibility, personal responsibility. When there are children already born, society needs to address taking care of the children that are a product of whatever decisions their parents have made. Single mothers, single parents, instead of looking to punish and stigmatize, thinking by punishing and stigmatizing single parenthood that it's going to prevent it's going to prevent single households, right? Single parenting. It's not going to do anything address the children that have already been born. That's what society should be looking to do. That's what policy should be doing. And Bill Clinton's welfare reform bill failed in that regard. And so I'm going to give examples of instances, people I saw, because uh, and this is not anecdotal, because it's sort of anthropological, because I've met people who were born to single mothers and who became homeless because their single mothers couldn't care for them, and they're kicked out and they go into poverty, a world of crime and things like that. So I'll give a particular instance. So my church, a decade ago, a church that I'm a member of, we normally evangelize, and so we'd go in the community to evangelize, to invite people to our church and just talk about the gospel. And I remember there was this young black American guy. He was an African American. He was 19 at the time, and his girlfriend was working at McDonald's. She was a few years older than him, and he listened to us, took a flyer, and he listened to us, and he told us this story. I remember him telling me his story, how his mother kicked him out at the age of 14. He was living on trains. He became homeless at 14. When a mother who's not receiving state assistance, when she's forced to kick out her son at 14, simply because she can't take care of him, by herself, because the state is not providing her support, what does she expect him to do? He's underage. He'll get into crime. He'll make the wrong decisions himself. And so he was now a father as well. He was 19, and he was a father, and he was in the same situation as well. His girlfriend who had been supporting him, who was a little bit older than him, she worked at McDonald's. So they were battling the same vicious cycle of poverty. And I've talked about how I've been wrongfully detained by the state of Maryland. I was swatted in my home, And what I saw, when I was wrongfully detained, held in detention wrongfully, as an innocent man, and I'm seeing that Bill Clinton's empowerment of law enforcement just created criminal cops who were targeting black people like me in my own home, who's not committing any crime. In any event, I'm locked up in one of the you know Bill Clinton's jails without a trial, and so I get to see and interview uh, people in jail. I find young black men, being raised by a single mother, who starts doing drugs, using drugs at the age of 11. He drops out of college, and he's forced to, he's forced into this vicious cycle of crime and poverty. He ends up in jail and mental health institutions. They become relief, a source of relief for them when there are no safety nets that can help them get out of the cycle of poverty. So I got to see victims of these bad policies that have had a disparate impact on black people, very disproportionate, draconian impact on black and brown communities. I got to see real people and I asked them questions, I interviewed them. How did they get into the situation they're in? And it's very unfortunate, the impact of the crime bill of Bill Clinton, 1994. The crime bill, again, that's a Violent Crimes Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994, and the Welfare Reform Bill. It just ended up creating poverty, exacerbating poverty, deep poverty amongst black people. Again, the rates as of about 2015 was of the 14.8% poverty rate in the US. Black households, households headed by single black women constituted, represented over 45% of them, 45.6% of them. They're made up of, households headed by single black women because they were not getting assistance. So it was just sinking them deeper into poverty. When somebody's already in a hard situation, there should be policy and mechanisms to get them out of the situation, instead of saying, well, you got yourself in this, just go and die, just get into a worse situation and go to jail. We remember our Constitution says, even though the 13th Amendment abolished slavery in the society, it said anybody who's convicted of a crime can be used as a slave in prison. And this is what we're finding out, where poverty has been criminalized. In fact, the fact is that once people find themselves in jail, detained, even without conviction, they're lured into slavery. I talked about being detained without a trial. We don't have bills of attainder in America, or bill of attainder, in America. But I've been wrongfully charged of a crime. I was wrongfully detained, and when I was detained, I found that they tried to lure me to work, to say, well, they'll go easy on you, to work at $2 a day. $2 a day, at $60 a month, when I haven't been convicted of a crime. And you found, in detention, you find there are many young black people who don't know better, who accept it. They're deceived into doing those jobs. So there's something criminal really going on, in America. It's terrible. It's violating our constitution, and in fact, I think they need to just end scrap slavery entirely, and so that even people, they're going to be carting off black people wholesale into, they're going to be warehousing black people in jails, in prison, and they should stop slavery, ban slavery entirely. There should be another amendment saying, well, no slavery in America, simple. So if they're going to be carting off black people off to the jail, up to prison, carting them, warehousing them in prison, at least they don't have to work, right? They don't have to work and help, private investors in prisons make money, because that's what's going on. Private investors are making money off prisons, and you're finding that this is actually really the case. It seems very apparent that uh, law enforcement in certain states are, targeting black and brown communities, charging them with false crimes they haven't committed, no trials. They're judges, crooked judges that are in cahoots with them, and they give them extended stays in jail. They're crooked judges. Just go to Montgomery County, you'll find them there. Montgomery County, Maryland. Crooked state attorneys filing charges that they shouldn't file, and they're targeting black and brown communities. Black people now, they're really targeting Hispanics. And they're carting them off to jail without a trial, or coercing them to take plea bargains and things like that. If you don't know your rights. I know my rights. I'm trained in the law. I have a law degree from George Washington University Law School, right? I'm an educated man. I'm a law-abiding American citizen. And I'm seeing this, so I could see there is systematic racism, systematic prejudice against black communities. And they have these policies that are abused. There are abuses in the process. There are, it's criminal what's going on. And Bill Clinton's policies, it empowered rogue cops, with qualified immunity. The building of prisons, the Clarksburg jail, Montgomery County Correctional and Rehabilitation Facility in Clarksburg, in Maryland, they should shut it down. While I was wrongfully detained, around 4 people died there. It was not in the news. Around 4 people. 3 people died of drug overdose. How are they getting drugs into the place, right? They have crooked correctional officers. One person, a white guy who supposedly had a PhD, committed suicide. Just wrapped something around his neck and committed suicide. I know this is jarring, this is traumatic to say, but this is the trauma that black and brown communities are facing in America, especially in certain southern states, criminal states like the state of Maryland, where they have a crooked criminal justice system. It's a racist criminal justice system that's targeting black men, right? So I've interviewed people, met people, like I said, being wrongfully detained. I met people who have been victims of these, the lack of safety nets and the welfare. And as I said, my main thing is, the more advanced you are as a society, you should have a better safety nets. The notion that poor people are bad, or they're poor as a result of their own actions. Like the new liberals say, that shouldn't be the case. That's actually bunk, right? There are instances where the state targets and impoverishes certain members of society. Take a look at myself. I have 5 university degrees. I'm an Ivy League educated person. I have an MBA. I was a stockbroker. I have a law degree. I had a great job. I had just gotten a six-figure job. I was working for the federal government. I don't do drugs. I've never taken drugs. I'd never been arrested. Police officers targeted me in my home, filed false, they abused me, raided me, shot me, stole my property, destroyed my property, charged me with a crime I haven't committed. And they had a judge in cahoots with a judge and a state attorney to hold me, detain me, prevented me from going to my job. So the state of Maryland, Montgomery County, has actually impoverished me because the judge said he wanted me to lose my government job, at the Pentagon. I've been charged with a crime. I haven't had a trial. The police who abused me, right? But there's actually prosecutorial misconduct because the state attorney filed the false charges to prevent prosecution of the rogue cops and to prevent me from filing suit against the cops. I haven't had a trial. I should be entitled to my day in a court of law, right? The Sixth Amendment says if I've been charged with a crime, the state, I'm supposed to know what I've been charged with. I know I haven't committed what I've been charged with. It's a false charge. In fact, it's a person who assaulted me, the cops, in my own home. They had no arrest warrant. So it was an illegal raid in my own home. I don't do drugs. I don't commit any crime. It was based on a false accusation. It was a swatting. I was swatted. I haven't had my day in court. So I was detained. I was locked up for 9 months. You can imagine being locked up for 9 months. I had money in my bank accounts. I had a job. When I was released, the judge refused for me to go to my job because he tried to coerce me, abuse his office to coerce me to take a plea bargain with the state. And I said, never, that's not going to happen. So the state of Maryland, Montgomery County, has actually impoverished me. I don't take welfare. How I can imagine a black man. I'm fortunate that I have people back home. I have a family back home. I can imagine a black person who all he has is America. If he's born into poverty, being born into poverty shouldn't be an automatic death sentence, right? This is America. Not in America. You should, it's supposed to be the, land of the free, land of opportunity, where people can make something of themselves. We always talk of Alexander Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton was not even born in this country. He came here poor. He became a great man. Why is it different for black people, for black men? I am an example. I've seen how the state of Maryland impoverishes black men, targets and impoverishes black men. You don't have to be committing a crime. I'm a law-abiding American citizen. I can put my reputation beside Judge James Bonifant, or the state attorney who filed the false charges against me. My reputation, my conduct is better than theirs. There are people who vouch for me. I was actually holding a top secret TSSCI, right? Top secret clearance in the Department of Defense. I was an auditor. I had a job. I had a six-figure job. The judge said he wants me to lose my job. That's illegal. He can't do that. It violates the 14th Amendment, due process of law. You can't take away my liberty, my life, my property without due process of law. Judge Bonifant, James Bonifant of Montgomery County, did that. So I know that the abuses of the system, they're rogue state officials who abuse the system to target, they target and abuse black men. So that's a structure. That's part of what you call systemic racism, right? So this judge could abuse the law, the rule of law, with impunity. So these are things, that we talk about when we're saying there is systemic racism. And, one doesn't necessarily have to be a bad person to be targeted by rogue state actors in America. I'm experiencing it. I've experienced it. I've experienced it. I would have said no, it could never happen. I mean, that's what I used to say. In fact, what's ironic is in May when I was raided, I have a friend, and I'm going to write a book about this eventually, and he's going to, he's going to state in his own words as well. I'll quote him. We were having a discussion about this, and this was what I was telling him. He was telling me about a friend of his, somebody he knows, and he was saying, look, this person, this is a person who also had a stellar record. He's a Nigerian, went to an elite school, went to Harvard, MIT, but he found, he was now in prison for mortgage fraud. And my friend was saying that, look, this guy is an innocent man. He's been targeted. And I was saying, no, this cannot happen. That can't happen in America. If the law targets you in America, it's because you're a bad person and they think you're better off the streets or whatever. But that it can't happen because I'd never experienced it. This was what I was telling him just a few days before I was raided and locked up for an offense I did not commit at all, without a trial. I found myself locked up in jail for 9 months. Can you imagine? 9 months. Apart from being under house arrest, I was placed under house arrest. I'm still being detained, right? I haven't had my freedom. And I had a job to go to. I had a federal job. And this is misdemeanors. Something I didn't, the law says, our law says, you're innocent until proven guilty. Right? Black people are presumed guilty. A charge, an accusation is not a conviction. It doesn't prove guilt. It's just an accusation. And we know there are rogue cops in America. What does it take to be a cop in America? Right? Many of these cops, you can see them. Many of them are irresponsible. Many of them are criminals. Every day you look on the news, you see a cop who's been convicted of a crime, who's been jailed, he's committed some kind of crime. You find he's dealing, he's doing so. Many of them, look, the standard of being a cop in America, I'm not somebody who says, hey, you should ban or should do away with, eliminate law enforcement and do away with police. No, we need the police. Right? It should provide safety, but there should be standards. There should be high standards, right? It takes many years, very high standard for a medical doctor, a surgeon to cut you up. Why is it that you allow somebody, a cop who has life or death decision over the community, he just randomly goes, right? He in the community. Why do you give somebody a life or death, the power over somebody's life, and they don't have sufficient training? All they need is a high school diploma or GED. Why? No, that shouldn't be the case. There should be more rigorous standards for our cops, because many of them are not qualified. Many of them don't even have the moral compass. They don't have the proper moral the requisite moral standard. They don't have the judgment to be able to do the job, because we're seeing the atrocities they're committing in black and brown communities. I've been their victim. I'm their victim. I lived to tell, right? I was somebody who would have been a skeptic because I trusted, law enforcement. I was somebody who, I'd never had an issue with them. I was somebody who just trusted them. But hey, I was a victim in my own home, right? I'm not lying. I have people who can vouch for me, character witnesses, and I could state with conviction my experience with them. And I'm eager to get in a court of law to show how the police dehumanized me, robbed me, committed armed robbery, almost killed me, assaulted me in my own home. I'm eager to show that in a court of law. So this video has gotten long. We're talking about the impact of Bill Clinton's crime bill. I've been a victim of Bill Clinton's crime bill and his welfare reform bill. I don't seek welfare. I've never sought welfare, but there are people who need it. Welfare shouldn't be stigmatized. Not everybody is born fortunate, and not everyone has you know, the good fortune of being born with a silver spoon, or the sort of support that they need. And children should not be penalized for being born. An advanced civilized society should actually care for children so that they can contribute to our society when they're adults, instead of punishing them just because society is trying to extract some kind of retribution against their single mothers, especially because of the color of their skin. I'll stop here. My name is Olu Osha, and I like talking about American presidents. And of course, I've already talked about the color of law violations, pivoting on subordination of perjury and fraud on the courts, and the police brutality I suffered, the dehumanization I suffered in my own home as an innocent law-abiding American citizen in the hands of Montgomery County Police, and fraud on the courts by the state attorney's office in Montgomery County, and Judge James Bonifant of Montgomery County. I'll keep you posted. Thank you.